Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining this webinar. Today's topic is about groups, how to use them in our new editor, the next one. For the ones who don't know me yet, I'm Nyam, and I will show you today what groups are, how to use them, how to use them. And this webinar will be also recorded, so you can look it up later in our help center, and you can ask me questions during this webinar. And after I'm done with my part, I will go through the questions and answer them. But if some questions should come up later, you can also contact me or our support chat with your questions. Okay, here's an overview. First, I will talk about what are groups. Then I will talk about how to create them so we can use them later in our tool. And after that, I will go to our next tool and show you some use cases. So first of all, what are groups? So the most characteristic detail is that it always takes a list as input. With groups, we can combine multiple elements, different information to one node, one variable, where we can output it as a list, or for example, as you can see here, that's an example output as a bullet list. And yeah, there are several parameters how to output the list. So for example, bullets or inline, and there are some things that you have to consider when creating groups. So now talking about how to create groups. One option is that we already have in our data a JSON list, so we can use this list directly, which is very simple. Then we can also create a group out of single elements, so we can create a group variable, and link all the single elements to the group. And the third option is that we take as input a string, and then we can split it up at a certain character. It might be a pipe, for example, where we can make out of string a list with single elements. I'll show you all these three cases in our tool later. So now we have created a group, we got a list, and now I will show you how to use them. So we have different parameters for outputting. First of all, the selectors, where we can define what we want to output out of the group. Here are all the ones that we can use. So for example, all entries that outputs all the elements that are true within our list in the defined order in our group. Then we also have all entries but in random order, with which we can increase the variance, for example. And then we have the first and last entries, which outputs either the first or the last elements of the list that are also true. Here we could create a hierarchy in our group with the ones that are maybe most specific and should be considered first, and then the next or third one. And yeah, Then we have the random entries when we have, for example, 12, 15 elements in a group and we want to randomly output 3 of them, which is also a good element to increase the variance, as it always changes from product to product, for example. And then we can also define a range from which it will be chosen. Yeah, and then there are some other parameters like determiner. If we select a determiner for a group, we have to keep in mind that it's that we only that we only can select one output, so one type, which will be always precede the value. So if we select a definite determiner, it will be always the car, the machine, the phone. It's always one type if we select it for one group. If we want to differentiate it, then I would rather suggest to create 2 groups and select for the one maybe the indefinite one and the other the definite one. And okay, then we have the conjunction. So we can define a conjunction which will be set automatically at the right position, so in front of the last element, so it sounds more natural if we want to list and output them in a text. Yeah, and then the different output formats, which are inline, the unordered list, which outputs bullets, and the ordered list. Okay, now I will switch to the next editor. Okay, I've created a project for this webinar called Webinar Group. Created a collection with these 2 objects. It's from e-commerce, and to be more precise, it's fashion. And there we have, for example, already a list in the data for the color. It can be 1 value or more of them if there are different variants of a product. And then we also have a string, like here for size, and there we can use the pipe as a character to split the string up. Okay, now I will switch to the composer, to the write mode, where I have already prepared 2 statements. So here we use the information from the data field size and color. And then here in the second statement, we will create a bullet for other information that has not been used for texting in the previous statement. Okay, so we have, let's start with the size. I already analyzed the data, so we can see here the information, the data fields that are available. So here the size, we have these 2 values. So these are viewed as single strings, and we want to create a data node. So the system already detects that there are pipes, and it suggests to split the string up and make a list out of it. That's the name, and the delimiter would be in this case the pipe. So these are all suggestions, but in the most cases we can use it right this way. Sometimes it might be useful, it makes sense to change it, but the suggestions are almost always right. So we can click on create, and then we get this data node. So we take this input as a list and split it at every pipe, so we get then the list. and it also automatically detects that it has to be, as we split the string up, it will be a group, so always a list. Okay, then we can create a container for this part and use this variable, this group variable, for this part. So what we can see here, for the selected test object, we get this output. So these are all the values, which we can also see here for this test object. They are in the order that comes from the data directly. We can take a look at it, which is, so it will be this output. Yeah, so in natural, no one would text it like that with a random order of the sizes. So what we can do is we can sort the values. For that, we create a mapping node, add a parameter, which is, so we take as input the list for our mapping, and this will give you the output to the group. Okay, here in this field, within the mapping node, we can write down the mapping expression. So what we want to do is we want to sort the value that we get as input. So it will be param1. It always has to be the same one name here. So we are referring to param1, which takes as input this list. And we want to consider that every element within this list is a number. So what we have to say is take every element of this list as an integer. So we say take the value from the list, sort it, assuming that every element within this list is an integer. And then we can see here, which is the preview of this node, it already sorts the values so we get the right order. If we go to the right, you can see here it also automatically adapts the changes. Then we have also another variant. So one option would be to list all the single values. Or another variant for this statement would be to say, I want the range, for example. So from 37 to 42. So we have these two values and create for them containers. And what we can say here is we select also for both of them the group size, but as method for as a selector for this group, we say give me the first one of this list, and for this the other one, you can say I want the last one from this list. So we can use this first and last in this case, in this example, as we sorted it before in the transform. And we can make sure the first one is the smallest number and the last one is the biggest. So what we have done in the to create the group is we take the value as string, split it at the pipe, and then sort it if necessary. Okay, then the next example is about the color of the product. So if we go to analyze back, we have color, and we have already imported it as a list. So we can see here the list for color. And here it also says these are the list entries. So it knows that it's a list. Then we can create a data node. The type is a list and the name will be color. So what we have here is just the list and the group variable, which we can use directly in the write mode. So you can see here red and pink will be one container using the information from group color. So we have these two elements, the comma, and in this case we could also say all entries random order, so it can vary. It will be inline, and in this case we want a conjunction which we can type here directly. It will be in red and white. I will do the same now. For the other variant, in red and pink. Also selecting group color, and okay, and then we just want the information about color within the container, so change it. Okay, so now we had these two scenarios. One is directly from the data, we get the list, then we just create the data node and use it for the statement, and then we have split the string and make a list out of it. The third option is that we have single elements and create on our own a group variable. So what we have, for example, other information that should be also useful for the reader could be, for example, country of origin. So could create a data node for that one. It's simply just a string, create a data node. Then we have different information like material, which was not used yet. It's also a string. And the last one would be, for example, information about the quality. And then we create them. Now we have in the transform these three data nodes. And what we can do now is we want to group them. We want to combine them together into one node. So we select a group variable. I will rename it to group details. And then I will just link them to the single phrase variables, which output the values from the data into this group variable. So if we, every time I link it to the group, one new port is available, so which that can be connected with another element. Okay, so we have this group details, which we create manually, and link the information we want to have with this group. So I will create a container for this part and say I will take the information from group details for this one. Okay, what we can see here is just the values right from the data, Germany and leather. It's not that informative, so we could change or modify the phrase variable, at least for some more information, like I can add for the phrase variable for material, for example, here, material. So that's how it would look like. Material is leather. Then here we have to define that it's the country of origin for this product. And the third element in our group was about bioquality. Here I would just rather say if this information is true, then it will be just output bioquality. Or biological quality. So if we switch to the right again, then we have this output. Country of origin, Germany, material, leather, and biological quality. And we want to create a bullet list out of it. So we can select here within the group output format. There we have this option in between inline, which is set as default. And if we select unordered list, then we get the bullet list. And if we change to ordered list, then we get it enumerated. So I will change to unordered list, and here we could also say all entries but in random order. So that's the third scenario, how to create groups and how to handle them in the text. So we get either a list of elements in line in the right order. For example, if we have numbers, we can add conjunctions, and we could change the output to a bullet list. Within our documentation, we also do have everything explained. So one would be the HTML3 documentation, where we explain these different selectors with some examples. So it's within containers, a group container in this case. So we have all the different methods and what to consider, and then as well some examples with the methods. And then we also do have a documentation for the expressions. So what we can write in the mapping expression, like the sort function I used today, that can be looked up here within the methods. Here we have all the different functions that can be used. So what we have here is, for example, the sort one. All the ones that use list as input can be used for the groups. Okay, and that's it for my part. If you have some questions, you can ask me them now. Otherwise, I would say thank you for joining this webinar. And if they should come up later during your creating your own groups, you can always contact our support chat. Thank you for joining. See you. Bye.